So now that we have our albedo map, it's actually going to be really simple to create the rest of our maps. Since the metalness map is pretty much just a black and white mask of what is metal and what is not metal on our texture, and since we already know what is and is not metal on our texture, this will be pretty simple. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pack all of my original textures into a folder, and I'm just going to duplicate the folder. So this guy will be our metalness map. And we don't need our unwrap wires. So I'm just going to collapse all of these things down into a single layer. And I'm going to turn my bottom layer off. We don't need our hexagon grid, we don't need our metal backdrop. So I'm just going to delete these guys out of the folder. This is our piece down here. And we need all of these things. So this is actually metal, as well as our centerpiece right here, and that guy. Alright. So I'm just going to select these guys, I'm going to collapse them just so I can easily grab them. And these guys, as well as our background, are all metal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layer, and I'm just going to dump in the color white, because more or less most of our texture is going to be metal. And then I'm going to mask select my rust around the edges here, and that is going to be black because it is not metal. I'm just going to fill it in. And additionally, our emissive pieces are not metal. So I'm just going to collapse those layers, select them, fill them in with black. And that is going to be telling parts of our object that are metal and are not metal. Now, that looks pretty good. We might wind up changing this a little bit once we get it inside of Unreal, but for now, looks like it's going to work. We're also going to need our emissive map, so that's going to be pretty quick and simple. Let me just rename this albedo, and I'm going to duplicate this folder. And pretty much the only thing I want in this guy is going to be our glowy bits. So let me just get rid of all of this stuff. And that will suffice as our emissive map. And we'll call this emissive. And the next thing we need to do is make our roughness map. So we'll get started on that next. Now that we have our albedo map, our emissive map, and our metalness map all done, we're going to work on our roughness map. Now, a roughness map controls how rough a material is, very obviously. Something that has a roughness of 0 is super smooth and will have a high reflectivity, sort of like a mirror or chrome. While an object with a roughness of 1 will be matte and will have all the reflections scattered completely on the material. So that would be something like cloth would have a roughness of 1. So let's get started working on that. So to start, I am going to take my albedo map and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm just going to turn off my other maps here. So I know that our blue emissive lights are not going to be reflecting any light at all, so they should be completely black, completely matte. So I'm just going to marquee select my objects and fill them in with black. Additionally, I know that our rust edge here is going to be pretty much matte. So I'm going to select our rust layer and make a new layer. And this is going to be almost black because there is still metal underneath it. So I'm just going to fill this in. We're also going to be storing a large portion of our scratch detail and wear detail in our roughness map. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in a few textures that I've acquired that we will use to create a nice level of detail underneath here. So I'm going to bring in this blue scratch layer here. And I'm just going to scale it down, and what we're going to use is it's going to be where the player would probably stand, so I imagine that would get a lot of scratch details and damage on there. So I'm just going to bring it down and tile it out. Now I'm going to fast forward a bit so you don't have to watch me do all this, so we'll be back in 2 seconds. So now we have our circular scratch layer, which is going to be on top. So I'm going to give that a blending mode of color dodge. So it kind of shines through, but we still have our original material there, and I'm just going to drop our opacity a little bit. And then I want to bring out the white scratches a little bit more, so I'm just going to use my levels tool, kind of push those out a little bit. There we go. Looks nice. The next thing I know that I want to do is I want these groove edges that are going to be going in. I imagine that they would catch some light as well, so I'm going to do a filter, find edges, and invert my selection so I have some white edges. And then I'm going to apply the blend mode of exclusion. Now, a lot of times I wind up just kind of like running through these and looking at which ones look nice. Actually, I like lighter color more, so I'm going to give it lighter color. And I'm going to bring my opacity down a little bit. There we go. And then we also want to give some nice detailing to the rest of the material here. And for my previous material, the metal had gotten pretty worn and pretty rough, so I'm going to bring in and I'm just going to sample a section over here. And I'm going to drop it above my base color. Okay, just fix that seam. And then just to show you, I do just kind of run through these and figure out which one I like the most, and I think would be the most accurate. I think vivid light or linear light would probably do good because they have these harsh lights, but they also have some like deep pockets where there's grime. I think that looks nice. I'm going to collapse these layers here. And I'm noticing that this center platform is very blue and very bright, and I want to take that down a little bit, so I'm just going to go to my image adjustment. I'm going to go to my levels, and I'm going to bring the high colors down a bit. And I'm going to marquee select and just bring the opacity. I want there to be a little bit less of the main metal texture underneath my scratch layer, so I'm just going to marquee select my scratch layer, and I'm going to take a brush with a low opacity, and I'm just going to knock out some of that. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do is, this is still a little bright, so I'm going to go to my image adjustments, and I'm going to go to my hue saturation, and I'm going to bring my saturation down a little bit, and my brightness down a little bit. It's looking pretty cool. And my carbide lines down here look alright. I'm also going to find the edges on our hexagon pattern here, so I'm just going to duplicate that. And I'm going to hit Find Edges, invert my selection. And this is kind of thick, so we're going to have to be very careful with this. We want it to be, just subtle. I'm going to set it to difference, and then I'm going to drop my opacity down pretty far. So we're just going to pick up a very faint lightness around the edges there. And that looks like it's going to handle our roughness map pretty well. So let me just rename this layer Roughness Map. And now we have our albedo map, our roughness map, our emissive map, and our metalness map. Now, using this type of workflow, you'll easily be able to create all the texture sets that you need for your materials inside of Unreal 4. If I open up the base stage Photoshop file, you can see that our roughness looks very similar to the roughness we created, the metalness looks very similar to the metalness we created, and our albedo map looks very similar to the ones that we created. And now what we have to do is export our objects from 3ds Max to Unreal 4 and build our materials, which is going to be really fun. So that concludes part 1 of creating a side-scroller in Unreal 4. We've learned how to easily break down concept art, make a scene that's scalable be set up for Unreal 4. We've also modeled a bunch of objects with the intention of using them in a side-scrolling game, and we've textured one of our props using a PBR workflow that will allow us to use Unreal 4's awesome new rendering system to its fullest. Next time, we'll work on getting our level built inside of Unreal 4 and create our PBR materials. And thanks again for watching 3dmotive.com. If you have any comments or questions about the materials covered in this course, please feel free to post on our forums and check out our other videos.